Imagine this. Your child disappears without a trace. Police search for weeks. Weeks become months. Months become years. Hope slowly fades, and eventually everyone begins to accept the worst. Then one day, your phone rings. A voice on the other end says 5 words that change everything. "We believe we found your son." For most parents, that would be the greatest miracle imaginable. But for one family in Texas, it became the beginning of one of the strangest mysteries in modern history. Because the boy who came home wasn't their son. It all began in 1994, when 13-year-old Nicholas Barclay disappeared from San Antonio, Texas. He vanished without a single clue. There were no witnesses, no ransom demands, no evidence pointing to what had happened. The investigation eventually reached a dead end, and after years of searching, many believe Nicholas would never be found. Then, 3 years later, something extraordinary happened. Authorities in Spain contacted the Barclay family. A teenage boy had been discovered wandering alone. He claimed he was Nicholas Barclay. According to his story, he had been kidnapped, taken across Europe, and finally managed to escape. The family could hardly believe it. Against all odds, their missing son had survived. When the teenager finally arrived back in Texas, reporters gathered to witness the emotional reunion. Cameras captured tears, hugs, and smiles. It looked like a miracle. But almost immediately, strange details began to emerge. Nicholas had disappeared as a blonde-haired boy with bright blue eyes. The teenager standing in front of everyone had dark brown hair and dark eyes. His facial features looked different. Even the shape of his ears didn't seem to match old photographs. More disturbing still, he spoke with a thick French accent. When relatives asked him questions about his childhood, he struggled to remember basic details. He couldn't recognize familiar places. He couldn't remember close friends. He behaved like a complete stranger. Most people assumed the trauma had changed him, but not everyone was convinced. An experienced private investigator named Charlie Parker couldn't ignore the obvious inconsistencies. The more he looked, the less sense the story made. How could someone's eye color change? How could hair naturally become so different? Why didn't fingerprints match? And why did nobody seem willing to ask these questions? Eventually, investigators uncovered the truth. The teenager wasn't Nicholas Barclay. His real name was Frédéric Borda, a French con artist who had already impersonated numerous missing children around the world. He was so skilled at manipulating people that investigators later nicknamed him the Chameleon. Using stolen identities, fake stories, and incredible confidence, Borden had convinced authorities that he was an American teenager who had disappeared years earlier. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the story wasn't his deception. It was the family's reaction. Even after obvious differences became impossible to ignore, Nicholas's mother and several relatives continued accepting him as their missing son. Why? Some investigators believe grief clouded their judgment. After waiting 3 years, they wanted so desperately to believe that they ignored every warning sign. Others proposed a far darker theory. What if they already knew Nicholas was dead? What if accepting an impostor was easier than answering uncomfortable questions about what had really happened to the real Nicholas Barclay? To this day, there is no evidence proving the family was involved in his disappearance. The theory remains controversial, and many believe they were simply victims of an extraordinarily talented manipulator. As for Frederick Bourdin, he eventually confessed everything. His deception was exposed, and the real Nicholas Barclay was never found. More than 3 decades later, the disappearance remains unsolved. No arrests, no body, no definitive answers. Only one haunting question remains. How did an entire family, investigators, and even government officials accept a complete stranger as their missing child? Sometimes reality is stranger than fiction, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't hide in abandoned houses or dark forests. Sometimes they simply convince you there's someone else. If you enjoy true mysteries, creepy stories, and unsolved cases, subscribe to Whisper Vault, because every story has a secret, and some secrets should never be uncovered.